Well, we are spending a lot of time talking about this Mariner team, trying to figure out who they are, Dave. We have no clear-cut answers. That means we have to bring in a legend. We have to bring in an expert, a man with expert eyes who can tell us exactly who this Mariner team is. You know him, you love him. He is the legend of ESPN baseball. He's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. The one, the only Tim Kurkjian is with us. How are you, sir?
I'm as lost as you guys are about Mariners. I am frankly lost about the entire American League other than the Tigers. The Tigers are really good. They're going to win that division, and that's about the only thing I'm certain of in the American League right now, which is exactly how we looked at it going into the season. Is this is going to be a free-for-all between maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 teams. So I'm confused. That's why baseball is so great, is that people every single day for a living are confused. So I'm just as confused as you are about the Mariners. I can't figure out if they're going to get really good or not.
If you were to look at them, and I mean, April was such a weird story because the offense was off the charts. It was one of the best offenses in baseball, and the pitching was struggling because of injury. And then May comes, and everybody that was red hot went ice cold, and now we're kind of in a no man's land. The pitching's getting healthier, but the offense goes to sleep every other game. It just, 15 strikeouts last night to Lucas Giolito. I mean, with all due respect to him, it's not like he's one of the premier aces in the league, and he just shut this entire offense down. And we're looking at it going, you just swept the Guardians. You were hitting great, you were pitching great, and then you come out in this game and you couldn't have looked more inept. And it makes it hard to understand where their needs truly are as we approach that trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, if you had told me in the middle of June that the Mariners would be higher in the American League rankings in runs scored than they would be in ERA, I would be really confused. I mean, I thought this team was good enough to have, lead the American League in ERA, and right now they're ninth and they're seventh in runs scored. The point is, if I were a Mariners fan, I would actually be encouraged where the team is right now, given that they haven't pitched for the most part, the way that we thought they would. But now with George Kirby back and, with other people getting healthy finally, the way they throw out of the bullpen for the most part, I would feel like, hey, this team is due for a great stretch of great starting pitching, which they really haven't gotten yet. And that's due to come. And when that does, if they can score a few runs, maybe they can really make some headway and make a playoff berth in the American League.
Yeah, and one of those guys, Tim, is Bryce Miller. And, coming into the season, he a lot of people were predicting he was going to be a Cy Young candidate. And so, I mean, it almost kind of feels like what you're talking about, that it's like a secret weapon that they have maybe in the second half of the season, where those guys get back to where they were last year, and especially Bryce Miller, it seems.
Yes. Let's say Bryce Miller gets really hot and starts to throw the way that everyone knows he can. Now you got Logan Gilbert back also. Andrew Kirby's back. He had a 0 walk, 14 strikeout game recently. I mean, you add those three guys at the top of their game, especially Bryce Miller, who's one guy with, again, overpowering stuff. Suddenly that Mariner pitching staff can take on anybody, which we all knew it could. It just really hasn't happened yet. So it's hard to tell a Mariner fan to be patient, but be patient. You got to think this starting rotation is going to get a whole lot better, and Bryce Miller is a part of that.
Tim, what do you think, because of what you just talked about with the American League, that it's just kind of jumbled and there are all these teams floating, you don't know who anybody is, that leads you to believe most of these teams are going to believe they're in it. So when it comes to the trade deadline, everybody's going to be out there clamoring for pitching and hitting and middle relief, whatever their needs are. And nobody, that maybe that's going to limit the amount of sellers there would otherwise be. Do you see it that way, that maybe the deals that would otherwise be there in other seasons may not be there this year because so many teams feel like, hey, we're in the thick of this because nobody's running away with it?
Right. I just don't know how, if you're a couple games, under or over 500 and you're a couple games out of the wild card, I just don't see how you can give up in this day and age at the end of July and say we're not going to make it to the playoffs. You have to try, which leaves basically the Rockies and the White Sox and just a few, the Marlins, maybe the Orioles, just a few other teams that are going to be, willing to give up players at the deadline as opposed to try to acquire them. So it's going to be a really interesting run. And again, this is where GMs earn all their money, like right now. Are we in this? Are we out of it? Are we going to take a chance and go get a number one starter or that big bat that we have to add for the middle of the order? And do we give up our kids in order to do this? These are huge decisions that will be made in the next month and a half, and GMs are all on the clock, especially after the big deal with Rafael Devers the other day.
Well, and unsurprisingly, Julio, one of those sort of question marks. Just fantastic defensively, but right now he's batting .257. He's got 10 home runs. We always say, this offense goes the way of Julio. It's going the way of Cal Raleigh much more, but this year. But what do you make of Julio, and does his defense make up enough to warrant what his status is here in Seattle?
No, he's going to have to hit more than this. When I say hit, he's going to have to produce a lot more than this because he's good enough to produce a lot more than this. Cal Raleigh's great, but he's slugging almost 200 points higher than Julio is right now, and that just doesn't follow. I mean, Cal Raleigh's been great, but Julio and Randy Arozarena really have got to start to hit the ball out of the ballpark and get some big hits and drive in some runs and do some things. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to make the playoffs. But again, the best hope for the Mariners really is that so few teams are really, really good right now. And so that wild card is going to be up between so many teams, and to be one game over 500, struggle the way the Mariners have, and be a half a game out of the wild card right now, I got to think that's a pretty good sign. They have to look at this and say, we're going to play better from here.
How do you view Julio, Tim, at this point? Because I think for a while we were always like, well, he's young, and he is young. He's 24 years old, but he's in his fourth season now, and he was anointed early. He got that big contract early. By way of comparison, he's not getting superstar money, but for a Mariner organization that is reluctant to spend big, it's a big deal. And there's he's marketed as the face and the superstar, a generational talent. Do you ever? Because I find myself, I love the guy. I think he's loaded with ability, but I'm looking at him going, well, maybe we misjudged him, and maybe he's not Griffey, maybe he's not A-Rod, maybe he's just going to be a very good player, but maybe not a special one that is that guy from April through September. How do you view him?
Well, he's not Griffey, and he'll never be Griffey because Ken Griffey Jr. was that great. But I think look, I'm not giving up on any level with anyone who isn't even 25 years old yet. But I think you're right. Part of the problem is after his first full year, we did a thing at ESPN, and he was voted like the 8th best player in baseball after one season, which just seemed a little bit early for me. And it did trouble me for his sake a couple years ago, I know, when he got off to that terrible start. One of the Mariners guys says, he's late on everything. And when a young hitter who's that big and that strong and that good is late on everything, that makes you worry. Now, I fully expect him to get hot, as he is known to do. I fully expect him to be way more productive the rest of this season than he's been to this point. But sure, it's a little bit odd to wonder. We should be wondering about a 24-year-old when, with that kind of talent, there should be very, very little concerns about him.
Hey, Tim, as far as the All-Star game goes, I feel like Andres Munoz probably going to get selected. But, you got Cal, certainly. But what about Julio? What about J.P. Crawford, for example? Can you see your way clear to those guys being All-Stars?
Certainly, I need to go through everybody else. I just haven't looked at the shortstops and see where JP finishes among the American leaguers. But yeah, and there's always a case if you get hot right before the All-Star break, you can make the All-Star team. But my guess is they probably just have 2 All-Stars, the closer and the catcher right now. But that can always change, and with injuries and guys who can't pitch and drop off for some reason, more than 34, 35, 36 guys make it every year. So I wouldn't be surprised if a 3rd or 4th Mariner ends up there, but somebody's going to have to get hot here, that's for sure.
Hey, Tim, how do you view minor. We see the ratings of the Mariners system. They've got 9 of the top 100, and they've got this incredible farm system. But you know better than anybody. That doesn't mean those guys step up to the big league level and they all turn into superstars. There's a lot that don't do anything. So how do you value the prospects in a way that you're like, I can't give up on this guy because of his potential, or do you look at them as their currency? And if they can help the team whose window is open right now, then you make a deal with those guys. How do you view a Harry Ford? How do you view some of those young guys that we hear their names over and over?
Yeah, the Mariners have a very good farm system, period. And I think the best way to build is through your farm system. However, baseball is a different game than basketball and football in that, if you play linebacker at Michigan and you love to hit people and you're really, really good and you play at that level for 4 years, you're going to start in the NFL as a rookie. But it doesn't work that way in baseball because it just is so difficult to play. The learning curve is so deep that it just takes an awful long time. So I'm not this guy who says, hey, you got to keep all your prospects. They're all going to be great. When the game just weeds you out eventually, because you better be really, really good to excel at a game that is this difficult to play. So the point is, if the Mariners have a chance to get somebody who they are absolutely certain is going to move them to the next level, I think you got to trade a young player or two. I think it has to be done. And I say that for all teams, because if you just wait for prospects to come up and be great, it doesn't always work out.
Then there's the fear of the guy ends up, you trade him away, and he becomes a superstar.
Right. And again, that's why this time of all GMs are under the gun. This is when they earn all their money. Are we in? Are we out? Do we trade that kid or do we hang on to him? I mean, there are hundreds of cases that we could talk about. I can't believe they traded him, and then the guy turns out to be not the great player. And then you say, I can't believe they traded him, and he turns out to be a star. Happens all the time.
Hey, what about this Devers? What did you learn about that trade, and how shocking was it to you?
Yeah, I was stunned because even though I knew the Red Sox were at least considering moving him, I didn't see it happening. I didn't see it happening this early. I didn't see him going to the Giants. But this is really going to help the Giants, who are desperate, in some cases like the Mariners are, for a big hitter, and he is going to fill a couple of holes on that team in a much-needed way. The Red Sox tried to move him off of third base to DH, and he resisted. Then they asked him to move to first base, and he resisted. Look, I wouldn't be happy if I were Rafael Devers either with the way that the Red Sox treated him, and the Red Sox made their fair share of mistakes here in this whole process. But in the end, sorry, you have to do what the manager tells you to do. You have to do what the boss tells you to do, and Devers just wasn't happy there, and they looked at it and said, well, maybe it's better if we move him along. Very risky move by the Red Sox, but part of me says if a guy doesn't want to play there, let's move him and get something in return. And they got a pretty decent haul given how good Devers has been and will be moving forward.
Hey, Tim, what's your take on the front office of this team? Jerry Dipoto, Justin Hollander, they take a lot of slings and arrows out here. A lot of what comes their way is brought on by comments that they make, and I'm talking more specifically about Jerry. But just from the outside, what is your opinion of the job he's done and the amount of time that he's been here?
Yeah, I think he certainly has done okay. I'm not slinging any arrows at Jerry Dipoto. He tries, he works, he's a former player, he knows what he's doing. And he's not the only GM who gets pounded in his home city all the time. It happens all over the game. But, again, the playoff run of a couple of years ago was really impressive, but you can't just have one, and you got to keep going. And this is where we're going to judge Jerry Dipoto. What does he do in the trade deadline this year? Who's he going to go get that is going to get the Mariners to the playoffs? Because if they don't get to the playoffs, then there are going to be a lot more arrows slung at the GM and the whole front office.
Hey, last one before we let you go, Tim. Same thought on Dan Wilson, a guy that obviously is a Mariner legend. He's beloved out here, and they had a 34-game stretch last year with him and Edgar in charge, and things went really well. So everybody felt like, well, that's going to be how it is moving forward. Well, it started out that way in April, and things changed, and now here we are, just trying to figure out who this team is at this point, seeing some of the same old problems crop up. So I'm curious from your perspective, your opinion on the job that Dan Wilson's done to this point.
Yeah, I think he has done fine also, but now they got to start to win. I mean, managing in the big leagues is really hard to do. Buck Showalter always has convinced me there's an art to doing this. This is why you go to winter ball and go manage. It's why you go manage in the minor leagues for years and years. You can't just take a guy, flip him in there and say, you're the manager now. Well, we do that all the time in the big leagues, and it takes time to learn how to do the job. So I'm going to give Dan Wilson more than the time he's gotten so far to really judge what kind of manager he is. When you don't score runs and then occasionally you don't pitch particularly well, sorry, I'm not blaming the manager for that.
We resisted asking you about Jorge Polanco. It's probably only funny when SVP does it, I think.
Is that I'm a complete sucker for the long Baltimore O's. So even I can't do it. Only SVP, but you took a good run at it.
That was very, very generous of you, Tim.
Yes,
Tim Kurkjian, a legend, one of the best. Always a great conversation. Tim, we really appreciate you taking time with us as always. Thank you so much, and hopefully we get a chance to talk again soon.
Okay, my pleasure, fellas. Thanks.